to use your template, the first thing you'll want to do for each storm is give it a storm number. Obviously, this is going to change. We're starting with storm number 1. Next storm will be storm number 2. Following storm will be storm number 3. You want to put the date. So we're going to say that this storm started on December 3rd. And then under cell I1, you're going to indicate who filled out this form. You see a little reminder here in cell B2 that this is the format we're looking for in terms of when the storms ended, and when roads were clear. So we want month, day, year, and then the hour and whether it's AM or PM. So we are going to say that this storm started on December 3rd, 2023 at 11 p.m. and that was a Sunday. And it ended on December 4th, 2023. And in that case, I tabbed too quick. I didn't put my time in, so it defaults to midnight. I can go back and I can just change that, and we'll say this storm ended at 8 a.m. on Monday. And then it asks, when did you have roads clear? Let's imagine that the team came in. By 11 a.m., we had nice, clean roads. The next thing you want to fill in is the type of precipitation. So we're going to say that this was a combo of snow and freezing rain. It's going to ask how many inches of snow accumulated. Let's say 4 inches. We didn't have a lot of drifting for this storm, so we'll say 4.5 drift total. It's also looking for your temperature minimum and your temperature maximum. So we're going to say the minimum, the coldest it got for this storm, was 26 degrees, and the maximum was 34. We had light winds, 7 miles an hour, and maybe they gusted up to 12 miles an hour. So you'll fill in your storm specifics. I'm going to pop over to the storm report tally so you can see how this is starting to populate. You see it has started pulling over our information based on what we have plugged in. It's doing some of the averaging for us, and it's keeping track of all that. Next up is number of applications and the time you began applying and the time you stopped applying, as well as the results for each type of material. This is pretty subject to if you want to track this, how much you want to track it. Ultimately, the storm report tally is going to derive its information from the cell K in M8, M9, M10, and the costs. So it's going to track your costs and your total usage. It's not necessarily going to track over long term the number of applications or the time you began applying, but you have the option to print this form. So every time you complete the storm report for a storm, you can print it. And if you're going to be saving that as a PDF or actually physically printing it, and you do want to have that level of detail, you would want to fill this in and keep it. So let's imagine we did 3 applications of salt, 1 application of brine before the storm. We used premium liquids once. We went out and we did sanding, just spot sanding where we had some traction issues just once. And for this one, we didn't use any treated salt. If we wanted to put the time in, we could do that. We could say we started applying, for instance, our brine at 3 p.m. the day before. And you see here how it ran out of space. Lots of information we're fitting in, so you might have to get a little creative. So we're going to say December 3rd, 3 p. That fits just fine. And we did our last application of brine at that time. That's the only application of brine we did. And then we can choose the results. So you go through and you can indicate for each type of material how your results were. They were excellent, good, or poor. And again, this isn't going to be tracked anywhere unless you choose to print and save this. So if you don't print or save it, you won't see this in the long term. Next, we're going to indicate how much of each of those products we used. So we want to indicate for salt. Let's imagine that we use 5 tons. For brine, let's imagine we use 20 gallons. Premium liquids, 10. For sand, we didn't go out for much. We did just say 1 ton of sand. And treated salt, we said we didn't use any. So you'll notice as we've been adding in our product costs, it's starting to calculate up here in the yellow area. So we're at a total of $3,420 in product. Now we're going to go down. We're going to enter everyone's hours. You can use the in-out times and notes field if you want. This is again flexible for your use. It's just a type-in field. If you wanted to indicate if somebody was on vacation and you wanted that in your notes, if somebody had to leave early, if somebody was out on workers' comp, whatever it might be, you could put that information in here. And then you would have that if you print this form. But otherwise, you can just use that field as you want to, but you do want to indicate regular hours and overtime hours. So I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to say for all of the employees who weren't on vacation, that we all had 5 regular hours, and then we bumped into 2 overtime hours. And what you see here is it has calculated up total spent on overtime across the team, total spent on regular hours across the team. And if we go back up to the top, we now see the labor captured in the yellow area for a total of $960, and our storm total is also going up. For the purpose of the example, we'll put in some equipment hours. We'll imagine that everyone spent 5 hours in their trucks. And then we went back through and we had a little bit of cleanup with some of our other equipment. We'll say an hour for the sidewalks for the grader, an hour for the loader, and maybe we spent 4 hours in the sidewalk machine doing some cleanup at the end of the storm. And you see here, it's calculating what we spent for equipment costs, and it's pulling that up into our storm total at the top as well. Last but not least, if you have contractors, you're going to want to pull in the information. So if our contractor says that they billed us for 5 tons of salt and $100 per ton, we'll put in that $500 there. And maybe they only had a couple hours of equipment and a couple hours of labor costs. So it was a total of $200 for labor and $100 for equipment. So we had $800 in total contractor costs, which should be showing up here. So we've now entered all of our storm information in for this particular storm. I'm going to go off of the storm data entry sheet and over to storm report tally. Because what you'll see here is for our storm report tally, it has carried the same figures through every single line. We are seeing storm 1's information captured on repeat for rows 4 all the way down. And that's because it's a formula that's pretty consistent carrying throughout. So what you will have to do each time you complete the storm data entry is that you need to save one of these lines before you clear the form. So this being storm number 1, I'm going to start on the first row, row 4. I highlight it. I right click, I choose copy, I right click again and go to paste special. From paste special, I have the options of choosing all formulas, values, formats, or comments and notes. I want to choose values. I'm asking it to paste just the values of that row and essentially to remove the formula. Click OK. And what we see now, if we click into any of these cells in row 1, is that it's removed the formula and it has left just the text, so just the information that was carried over. If we go down to any row 5, 6, 7, we still see those formulas, which is what we want, because as we fill in subsequent storms, it's going to fill this information in for us. For storm number 2, when we get into storm number 2, I will do the same, but for line 5. Storm number 3, I will highlight, right click, copy, and paste special values in row 6 and all the way down through. So we'll go back over to storm data entry. We've confirmed that we went over to storm report tally. We saved our results for this storm. We've captured them. We've memorialized them. So now we can clear this form. But important, before I hit clear, if you want to print a copy of this, you'll want to go to print. You're going to see that it opens up a PDF. And you can save this. You can either save it, you can print it. This is all that detail, whereas the storm report tally is keeping just the basics of the costs and the usage over time and the weather specifics. In higher level, this is going to be the detail that if you want to have on file for your town, you want to make sure you print a copy of this form before you clear it. So again, just use that blue print button and it'll create that PDF for you. If you have trouble using the print or the clear functions, it might be that you didn't make it a safe file initially and it's not allowing the macros to run. All right, so we have saved row 4. We have printed our form, and now we're going to hit clear. We're going to watch it remove all of our entries. We now have a clear form ready for storm number 2. It kept our employees' names. It kept our employees' pay rates. It kept our equipment information and other rates, but it removed all of the information that we want to enter for storm 2. As storm 2 comes along and we start plugging in that information, just put a couple in here for example, you'll see that it pulls it over Under storm report tally, put in some temperatures, for example. We'll say that we had 5 inches of snow, 6-inch drifts. Let's imagine it was a windier storm, storm number 2. And we'll go over to storm report tally. And you see how it started to populate it. It's pulling it all in as we enter it. So we still have the information from storm 1. Now we have the info from storm 2. What will be important for storm 2 is that we right click on the second row, which is row 5. We copy, we right click and do paste special, and we choose values. And that's going to allow us to keep the information that's on from storm number 2, so that again, when we print and then clear this form, we now have row 6 ready for storm 3. If you have any questions, reach out to T2 and we're happy to help.